Good evening. There's nothing like a good ghost story to pull in the punters. For pubs and hotels, claiming of a ghostly presence hovering among the kegs or on the landing is a sure way to attract a lot of custom. But one manor house just 6 miles north of Preston has a boast which outdoes the rest. In the past 50 years, Chingle Hall, its owners claim, has been home to some 20 spooks. Not bad for a building with only 4 bedrooms. But then they never rest.
Ladies and gentlemen, you must concentrate. You must not break the circle. Do not break the circle, whatever may happen in this room tonight.
Just another night at Chingle Hall, a 700-year-old manor house set on the remote moorlands north of Preston, Lancashire. Steeped in a rich and grisly history, it's perhaps no surprise that it's claimed to be Britain's most haunted house. So notorious is the hall, and so intriguing the tales, that ghost hunters come from far and wide in the hope of experiencing something from the other side.
The first time I ever came here was around 4.5 years ago, and I was convinced on the first night of the hauntings here. I don't know how many ghosts are here, I don't know what is here or why it's here, but I know it's here.
There have been a lot of stories about sightings and apparitions at Chingle Hall, and it's got some very grisly legends attached to it. I've heard tales of people being locked up and heads buried in walls. It's got a very gory and bloody history.
Whatever the truth, people do believe they've seen extraordinary things at Chingle.
I will never go inside Chingle Hall again. I mean, there's just something so spooky about the place. I will not step foot inside Chingle Hall.
People do come here complete non-believers who go away complete believers.
Down the years, hundreds of people have passed through Chingle's doors saying they've experienced something inexplicable. Photographs and research notes boast of what they claim as evidence. People pay up to £40 a night to ghost watch at Chingle. It's booked for months ahead, but visitors are not usually locals.
Tourist place, of course. People come from other parts to see the ghosts. But I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a local. Certainly, I can't think of one that said they've seen a ghost there.
So is Chingle Hall just a tourist trap, dreamt up to attract the gullible? Or is it a legitimate paranormal study centre?
The way Chingle Hall was sold to me personally, you were guaranteed to see a ghost. Something was guaranteed to happen. I thought it was a load of codswallop. I thought it was a big con.
Well, you wouldn't expect a down-to-earth Lancashire lad to be easily persuaded that ghosts exist. Chris Edwards from Southport went to the hall to raise money for his charity. He was a confirmed skeptic.
I was reading a book on my own and I just saw a movement at the corner of my eye. So I looked up, and as I looked up, a figure of a monk drew across the door, appeared to look at me, and basically disappeared around the door again and vanished into thin air. I was absolutely petrified for a few seconds. I need real hard proof before I believe anything, and it's been provided here at Chingle Hall.
I think the ghostly monk that most people talk about is John Wall. He is the last Catholic martyr in this country. He was hung, drawn and quartered in 1679. His head is supposed to have been brought back to Chingle Hall and buried somewhere in the grounds.
Did you see what happened to the matron last night? No, what happened?
The ghostly sightings led local TV reporter Paul Crone to investigate Chingle.
Let's go upstairs to the St John Wall room, shall we? It's supposed to be haunted.
He spent the night with a group of fundraising nurses from Royal Preston Hospital.
I thought, we're going to sit here for 9 hours, nothing will happen, we'll film, we won't see anything, we won't hear anything. How wrong I was. I mean, basically it just turned into a complete nightmare.
I usually work with a film crew.
We all came that evening looking for a good time, a good night out, a group of girls who all got on well. We went home in the morning, very different people. Just turned my head to look at one of my colleagues and I saw what looked like a figure behind her, a cowled figure. It looked like a monk. It stood behind, looking down at her. I couldn't see its face at all, I couldn't see any features. I just felt frozen, I couldn't do anything, I couldn't move, and it took me a few seconds to actually say anything. I was frightened.
Are you all right?
Everybody knew she wasn't joking, and it was genuine, and she saw something, and she was absolutely positive. I mean, I couldn't see anything, but I knew she was telling the truth.
Paul's own encounter was to happen on the staircase.
There was no one near me, the door slammed shut, and I just went ice cold from head to toe. So people dived with the cameras and took all the flashes, and as the flashes went off, we saw a blue streak just whiz up the stairs. You can't make something like that up. It genuinely did happen.
Even in the cold light of day, when the ghost hunters have gone home, the hall's unearthly inhabitants seem to be active. Plumber John Green came to the hall during the winter last year to install central heating.
I live quite away from here, and I've never heard of the place or the reputation that it had.
It's been a tricky job, but...
John needed help to get the work completed in time, so he called in a mate the next morning.
I finished off in here yesterday. What the hell has happened to my pipes?
To my amazement, there was just nothing there. The boiler was in position, but all the flue, the pipes, there was just nothing there.
And then tourists have been messing around with this, they'll know about it.
It would have been impossible for anyone to have ripped those out without making an absolute devastation. And even an expert would have taken some while to remove everything.
When he came back into the room minutes later, John Green was in for the surprise of his life.
Don't believe it.
All the pipes were back where he'd fitted them the night before.
They're real.
I just couldn't believe it. I was in shock, and I just really didn't know what to think or say.
Could any of the goings-on be explained by Chingle's mysterious past and its former residents?
One of the people we do know who lived in Chingle Hall was Eleanor de Singleton. She's the only daughter of John Singleton. She was born in 1568, but she was deemed mad and locked up in a room all on her own. She was abused by the rest of her family and died a very tragic death at the age of about 20.
Was Eleanor the uninvited ghost at a séance held by fundraisers on the 7th of October, 1995?
I must admit I didn't really expect anything to happen. I really didn't.
I've never been in a haunted house before. It's exciting.
Please, settle down. We need to create the right kind of atmosphere if you want me to lead you in a séance.
They'd come for a bit of a laugh, novelty value of staying in a haunted house.
You do want to have a séance, do you?
I thought, well, a load of rubbish. Like, you know, I'd seen these things on television, you know, in films and things, and I didn't think much of it.
Whatever may happen in this room this evening, do not break the circle unless I say so.
We've never done this before.
Me neither.
Is there anybody on the other side who wishes to contact us? If there is anybody there, give us a sign.
I could feel a pressure on my back, a warm pressure.
I can feel something.
Like somebody had two hands on the back. The pressure just built and built. And I thought, what is it?
All right, Vic.
I thought Vic was actually going to have a fit or something like that. I was quite concerned.
Whatever it was then started on another member of the séance.
Angela, what's the matter? I can feel it too.
The feeling I had was like a rush of adrenaline, but it lasted a lot longer than, like someone walks over your grave. It took a long time to actually pass through me.
It moved round to include Vic's wife, Wendy.
I could feel this unusual feeling, as a baby's in your stomach type of thing, and you can feel it. It was just pushing and pushing.
Eleanor, if you are with us, give us a sign.
Lavender. Yes, I can smell it.
We could all smell lavender. I think it was strongest near Vic, and then it seemed to come round, and with the smell of lavender came this awful sadness, just a horrible feeling of sadness.
The tears absolutely rolling down my face. I mean, I don't think I cried so much when my dad died, sort of thing.
He wasn't the only one. Soon Wendy, Angela, Annette and the others also started to sob. Where would you expect to find a ghost? Somewhere historical, usually. Gothic castles, creepy graveyards and old country houses are favourite. Comparatively newfangled things like aeroplanes don't often get a mention. But airborne apparitions are what witnesses claim to have encountered in tonight's second story. The Derbyshire Dales, where swirling mists descend almost daily to swallow up those brave enough to venture onto the hills. In the skies above, the dense fog can be just as treacherous and unforgiving. Littered with crash sites, the peaks are a graveyard for more than 200 aeroplanes. Many of the crews who lost their lives were returning from wartime bombing missions, young men who weren't ready to die. The tragic nature of their deaths may account for the Peak District's long history of mysterious sightings. For Sheffield postman Tony Ingle, the peaks provide an escape from city life. Last summer, he saw something that he couldn't explain.
Took the dog up the lane for a walk, got so far up, and then I suddenly saw this plane out of the sky coming down the valley. And it was very, very eerie. The propellers were going around, but there was no sound. And it was dipping all the time, as if it was getting lower and lower. And I thought, crikey, this thing is going to crash. And as I looked over the edge, I thought I'd see the plane. There was no plane. So I just looked, and there was just lambs and sheep in the fields. The best way to describe it was as if someone had died and he'd moved into a room, and it was just like death. It was terrible. It was a very eerie sensation, not very nice at all. And since then, we've tried to get him up the lane, and he just won't have it. He'll just cower down at certain areas, and you've got to visibly pull him up. And we've tried it with myself going up the lane with a dog, my wife going up with the lane with a dog, and friends, and he just won't have it.
Come on!
Was Ben displaying evidence of the sixth sense that many animals are believed to possess? A few Dakotas are still flying today. Maybe that could explain what Tony saw.
Well, we've got 11 Dakota aircraft, and therefore that makes us certainly the largest Dakota operation, civilian Dakota operation in the world, in fact. And we checked into the flight time details that you gave us, and we found that none of our aircraft were airborne, let alone in the area that you specified on the time in question.
The only other British Dakota that could have been flying at the time belonged to the RAF. It was airborne that day, but 150 miles away. So no Dakotas had been flying in that area at the time of Tony's sighting. But one had crashed there 50 years earlier.
15 to 5, that was embarrassing. Well, the ground
A crew of US servicemen prepare to board a C-47 Dakota at Leicester East. The war in Europe has just finished, and spirits are high.
It had something to do with your pitching. Oh, yeah? Well, if you're going to throw a curveball. I mean, I don't want to criticize. Come on, don't scare me. If you're going to throw a curveball, you want to put some curve on it. Uh-huh. That's something... Hey, how you doing?
Hi there, lads. My name's John.
John, I'm George.
Pleased to meet you, George.
Oh.
Pleased to meet you, Al.
What can we do for you?
Well, a little bird tells me that you lads are flying up to Scotland, Renfrew.
As a matter of fact, we are.
Well, you see, the thing is, I'm looking to visit my mum, who's in Renfrew, and I was wondering if you might have room for a little one. And the Jeep, of course.
And the Jeep as well?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, we usually got room for a small Scotch, John.
All right, you're on, you're on.
Thank you very much.
Okay, guys, you ready? You got the pins and rudder lock?
Yeah, down the pins, doing the lock.
All right. And you guys, we're gonna get you next time.
No chance.
With their extra passenger, RAF serviceman John Dunlop Main, the US airmen set off for Renfrew, north of the border, on a purely administrative mission.
One clear. All right, let's go right through this cloud. Let's find out where we are. God, we're too low. We're too low. Pull up. We're gonna crash. Hang on. Ready for a crash landing. We're gonna hit.
Official papers record the roll call of the dead. 6 American servicemen and 1 British.
I was very shocked to hear that the plane had crashed in this area and that people had been killed.
The mystery deepened after Tony's story appeared in the local paper. Others wrote with their own sightings of phantom planes in the peaks. The earliest dated back to 1948.
I must have been about 7 or 8 when I saw the plane. I remember it because I'd been interested in planes from a very early age. I preferred them to dolls.
Mummy?
Young Audrey Twigg had been with her mother in the Hope Valley when she saw something.
Sandwich, you've hardly eaten anything.
I can see one that's just up there.
Your eyesight's better than mine.
Look.
What baffled me mostly was the fact that Mum couldn't see it.
Do you want a cheese?
I think the strangest thing was how low it was.
Could Audrey's sighting all those years ago be part of the same mystery as Tony's encounter? Paul Booth and Stephen Lewis devote their time to piecing together the history of the tragedies.
In my research, I found that a lot of these phantom sightings have actually taken place in areas where the actual aircraft have crashed.
But what about the Hope Valley, where young Audrey made her sighting?
There was a Airspeed Oxford crashed in the Hope Valley, and the young pilot was only 19-year-old, and he was doing his first solo navigation flight, and he took off in clear weather, and a cloud came down as it is today, and he descended through the cloud to try and find his position, and the aircraft flew straight into the moor.
Tony Ingle's story also brought more recent sightings into the open. Verena Bishop from Sheffield had her own strange experience in 1994.
It was a Thursday afternoon in March. I was walking from Hope along the Castleton Road. Something made me look up into the sky, and seemingly just above my head was this plane. There was no sound whatsoever. The wing must have been directly over my head because I just saw the fuselage. And I thought it's going to crash. I had to duck. It was so low, I thought it's going to hit me. It just skimmed over the fields, and about the second field disappeared completely. So I thought, perhaps there's a hollow in the field, that it's gone down there. However, I waited for an explosion, but nothing happened.
In fact, a plane had crashed in exactly the same spot 51 years earlier. Farmer Joe Eyre saw it go down.
I was taking a load of coal up to a farmhouse. Apparently the plane crossed a cement works quarry exceedingly low, and it must have come in a straight line and plunged straight into this bank and blew up.
There are still hollows marking the plane's impact. 5 airmen have been on board a Wellington bomber flying from Wellesbourne, Mountford, near Stratford-upon-Avon in 1943. But Verena Bishop had no idea a Wellington had gone down in that field.
When I heard about the history, I was amazed to find later that there had been a crash in exactly the same spot as I'd seen it. It was quite eerie, having had that experience.
Aircraft historian Gerald Scarrett tells of a macabre twist to the ghost plane stories. He's investigated crashes for more than 40 years, among them the loss of a giant Super Fortress bomber.
The B-29 crashed in November 1948 on Bleaklow, which is the biggest hill at the back of Glossop, 1,600 feet above sea level.
Gerald's fascination with the history has taken him on numerous visits to the scene of the crash.
It was my birthday, 1974, and just scratching about in the wreck. It had been raining very hard, and when it rains very hard, it kind of sieves all the small pieces. And I bent down and I thought it was a brass washer, and when I picked it up, it was a ring. I wiped the peat out of the inside of it, and it had a name on, Landon P. Tanner. I knew all the names of the crew, and he was the pilot. And I sent it back to the States.
It was on a routine reconnaissance photo mission from RAF Scampton.
Well, with me finding the ring, these chaps from Birmingham who do this kind of thing in Snowdonia got in touch with me. She said, can we come up and can you show us the wreck? I said, yes. So they came up, and I took them up to the V-29.
They found one of the crew's watches smashed, and it had stopped at 10:50 the time.
One of the lads said, whereabouts did you find the ring? And I said, here, and I kind of bent down to show him the exact spot. And the next thing I looked up, and they were kind of 10, 15 yards away. And they just scarpered off. They're more like scared rabbits.
Where are you going?
They were just ashen-faced and left me there. And it's quite away from the road.
When Gerald caught up with them, they told him what they'd seen.
I said, what are you doing there? They said, believe it or not, there's someone standing behind you looking down with full flying uniform on.
Hey, what's up?
And I turned around, obviously, and saw nothing. And they said,
hey!
Well, we've seen it, we're going. And they shot off the moor. Thanks for bringing us, and they went. And I've never heard from them since.
Some believe there are lost souls on the moors. If this should be the case, at least attempts are now being made to lay them to rest. In May 1995, a memorial service was held on top of Bleaklow for the airmen who died in the Dakota crash. 9 months later, the tragic victims aboard the Wellington were remembered with the laying of a plaque in the Hope Valley. There are more memorials planned, but since those commemorations, there have been no reported sightings of the Wellington. The Dakota hasn't been spotted either. For all that, Tony Ingle says his dog Ben still won't return to the site of the crash. Good night.